Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today is a special day. I've decided to start a multi-part series detailing the Dark Ages, also known as the Early Middle Ages. This refers to a period coined by scholars as a quote-unquote dark period of human history, but in all actuality it was honestly fine. There were multiple scientific breakthroughs, math was used a lot more often, and poems and plays were written, and empires in the Middle East became super powerful. But I digress. The reason it's called the Dark Ages is because there aren't a lot of records about this time as much as we're used to with other periods in history. I'm making this video to span a few hundred years of time or so, and maybe excite you about this kind of history, and encourage you to explore it on your own. So, let's begin. In part 1, this video, we will explore a brief history of the collapse of Rome, which plunged all of Europe into a new era without the constricting and somewhat controlling influence of Rome. Because of this, other less developed cultures were able to take the stage and carve their own way through history. So, get ready because here we go. Chapter 1. Beginning of the End. Spanning 2nd century to the 3rd century AD. Although originally an economic powerhouse, the Roman Empire had become weaker over the years, due to lackluster leadership, political issues, and so on. Additionally, in the 2nd century, evidence of the Roman Empire's decline began to show. Their time was coming to an end. Being split into two sections of the empire, West and the East, didn't help either. It sparked multiple civil wars and unrest amongst the people. The country was spread thin and its borders had become weak. Archaeologists suggest that some of the factors of the collapse indicate urbanization, failure of commerce, and multiple diseases, and increasing issues with Germanic tribes from the north. Now, Germanic tribes, I say this as these were people who had origins in what is nowadays Germany, so they're like ancient Germans. From 150 to 400 AD, 15 million Roman citizens had died due to these issues that I mentioned earlier. This is guessed to have happened because of the Dark Ages cold period as well, a drastic temperature change in the region during this time. So basically, to sum all this up, it got really cold really fast. There was limited trade and commerce coming into the cities, and Gothic warlords were invading all kinds of small parts of the country. So if you can imagine, things weren't going very well for Rome. The weakening in profit and security in the Roman Empire could be blamed on the emperors of the time, but there were so many other factors in play that no one could really just blame one thing. The Huns, also known as the master horse-riding killing machines from Asia, also came in like a wrecking ball during the 3rd century when they continually attacked the northeastern side of the Roman Empire. The Huns were a confederation or alliance of multiple nomadic horse-riding tribes, most likely coming from what is nowadays Kazakhstan, which I'll provide on the screen right here. They were able to master the art of archery on horseback. They were a pretty big threat to anyone who stood in their way. Personally, if I saw them coming, I'd run the other way too. Anyway, back to our timeline. Just wanted to give you some context on the big baddies of the time period. Now, because of the decline of the population and the desperation for troops, Rome had to resort to untrained barbarian settlers who lived in Roman territory. Due to their lack of discipline, the Roman army was too weak to withstand many of the battles with the Goths, giving them a headway to gain a foothold in Roman territory. Chapter 2. The Gothic War, spanning from 376 to 382 AD. In the year 376 AD, a large migration of Goths entered the Roman territory from the west. They began to cause issues such as raiding and pillaging many towns nearby. Valens, this guy right here, was the Eastern Roman Emperor during this time. He was determined to push back the Goths. He launched a counterattack against them after they revolted against the Roman military. At the Battle of Adrianople, Valens led a massive army of mostly barbarians hired for just a single campaign into battle. They suffered a massive, crushing defeat, and Valens was killed in the battle. Sorry, buddy. During the war with the Goths, the Roman Empire, West and the East, effectively cannibalized itself just to defend its own self from destruction from their attackers. In the year 395 AD, Theodosius I, the emperor during this time, led multiple campaigns against the Goths and was wildly successful. But unfortunately, he died, leaving behind an empire in desperate need. His two incapable sons fought one another constantly, leaving the empire weak and vulnerable for Goths to arrive and steal the show. Chapter 3: Breach and Defenses, 406 AD. No matter how hard they tried, the frontier near Gaul, which is nowadays France, broke open after the battle near a city called Mainz in ancient Germany. The Goths and other Germanic peoples charged across the Rhine River and demolished Rome's defenses, and they were laid to waste. The Roman commanders were killed, and the raiding tribes flooded into Gaul, and almost entirely the region of Western Europe was engulfed in chaos. The countrysides were burned, thousands were killed, and during the chaos, a mass anti-barbarian hysteria followed. Now, remember when I said that many settlers arrived in Roman territory and began their lives there peacefully? Well, some of them even had children and even intermingled with other Roman citizens. I bring this up to bring to light a man named Stilicho. He was a half-Goth, half-Roman, who had become a general and a commander during the Gothic Wars. He led multiple successful defenses against the Germanic tribes, and he was also the ward for young Honorius, the future Roman emperor during this time. As Honorius grew up, Stilicho advised him and consoled him so that he would grow up to be the best emperor that Western Rome deserved. But unfortunately, due to the hysteria, Honorius was pressured into having Stilicho executed. The people feared he was a spy for the Goths. Honorius, still so young and naive, gave in to the pressure and had Stilicho summarily beheaded. Edward Gibbon, an essayist and an expert in the history of the Roman Empire, once wrote in the 1700s, quote, "Stilicho submitted his neck with a firmness not unworthy of the last of the Roman generals." Now you're probably wondering, Roman generals? What do those words mean? How does this have context to the story? Well, the words Roman generals refers to the ideal Roman citizen who upheld Rome's values and truths, such as listed here: virtue, honor, and love for his own country. I personally think it's truly crushing to find that someone who was only half Roman truly upheld Rome's ideals. Afterwards, Honorius was left with advice from petty courtiers and even pettier scholars. This led to weak leadership and even weaker defenses. Here come the Goths to stir up trouble. See, they were like an itch that just wouldn't go away, and now they were coming with the big guns to take the real prize, which was Rome. Chapter 4: Rome Falls, 410 AD. In the year 410 AD, a Visigoth army led by Alaric I, king of the Visigoths, invaded and sacked Rome. For a whole 3 days, Rome was stripped of all its valuables. Tens of thousands were killed, bodies littered the streets, and buildings were burnt to the ground. One might only think of what horrors were seen during those 3 days in Rome. Can you imagine how it felt if you were a Roman citizen, hearing about a massive invading army of mysterious, vicious barbarians slowly marching toward your city. And one day they surround the city of Rome. Drums and war cries in a different language you've never heard before can be heard from inside the city walls. And suddenly, without warning, the walls are besieged and the gates are broken down, and everything you held dear was destroyed just for money and power. The Visigoths were joined by other Germanic tribes and ransacked the entirety of the Western Roman Empire afterwards. However, during the siege of Rome, interestingly enough, many of the Goths respected sanctuary within the Vatican and other church property, but only the lucky few who made it inside survived. Meanwhile, the Eastern Roman Empire was losing territory as well due to the Huns, which I mentioned earlier. But they managed to withstand for a little while longer while they retreated into Constantinople. The city of Constantinople was built in 324 AD, less than 200 years before this. It was built atop an older Greek city named Byzantium, and it was designed by the Emperor Constantine I during those years, 200 years ago, by the way. He was a Roman emperor who believed this was going to be the new capital for Rome. Based on its geographical location that I'll provide here and show, it would provide trade to the east and what would now become Russia to the north, through the Black Sea. Constantine I, interestingly enough, while fighting a gruesome war, he believed he had seen a sign from God on the battlefield. After that battle, he went and made it legal for citizens of Rome to become Christians, which I think is pretty cool. Now, to review, today we've covered the Gothic expansion into Roman territory and the war with the many vying powers that were after Rome's wealth, as well as the impending factors that spelled doom for Rome. We also covered the sacking of Rome and a brief look at Constantinople and the people who live there who will one day be the successors to Rome's legacy. In closing, in the next episode in this series, we'll cover the sprawling events after the collapse of the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, that is. The Eastern Roman Empire is still kicking. The events including the rise of Islamic empires to the east, as well as our good friends, the Goths, adopting Rome's traditions and playing emperor. See you next time in our series, The Dark Ages. But wait, before you go, make sure you hit that like button if you enjoyed this, and subscribe if you want to see more of this content, and let me know down in the comments what you thought about this video, and if you have any ideas for me in the future about what kind of videos I want to make. See you in the next episode. Bye bye!